But the second book I'm looking at is Sophie Kinsella's Twenties Girl, which was recommended to me by a friend. Now, before I get into the book itself, it's worth mentioning that without that recommendation, I probably would never have read this book. I'm aware of Sophie Kinsella as the author of the Shopaholic series, and just the word shopaholic itself is a little bit of a red flag to a male reader. But not only that, the cover to this one isn't just pink. It's pink with glitter on it. You couldn't be waving more red flags to a male reader if you wanted to. Now, covers do vary, but yes, without that recommendation, I simply never would have read this book, which would be a real shame because I actually found that I thoroughly enjoyed it. There were a couple of things that perhaps didn't quite sit right with me, but overall they were very minor things in what is a highly entertaining book with some genuine laugh-out-loud moments. The main character of the novel is a girl called Lana Linkton. Lana attends the funeral of her great-aunt Sadie with the rest of what is quite a dysfunctional family. To a soul, they are all thoroughly miserable, but not about the loss of their aunt, but rather in having to attend the funeral of a woman they knew little or nothing about. But Lana is visited by her great-aunt Sadie's ghost, who demands that they stop the funeral while they search for her missing necklace. So Lana claims that her great-aunt has been murdered, and the police get involved and the funeral is halted. Now, prior to the arrival of Sadie, if you'd asked me what women's fiction was about, I would have said this was pretty much the archetype. It's more about characters, relationships and families than anything else. When I talked about 50 Shades of Grey, I talked about how simple that plot was, but with Kinsella's book, there are a number of subplots going on at the same time. There's the police murder investigation, there's the story of Sadie's lost love, her romantic interest in an American called Ed, Lana's attempts to rekindle her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Josh, her failing business with a friend Natalie, and there's the search for the missing necklace, of course. There are similarities between this and 50 Shades of Grey. Both novels are told from a first-person perspective, and a great deal of both is devoted to the main character's thought processes, indecisions, and insecurities. But the main difference is that while I never really warmed to or cared about Anastasia Steele particularly, I found myself rather liking Lana. Though Lana's stalking of Josh could almost become unforgivable, the character is one of real warmth and compassion. Additionally, when Sadie doesn't get her own way, she has a habit of stamping her feet and shouting until she does, which is not necessarily behaviour I particularly want to read about. But because Sadie is a real free spirit, she speaks her mind, and even though she's a ghost, she kind of lives life to the full. She's a friend that I think a lot of people would really want to have around. One character that didn't particularly work for me was the character of Ed, the American who initially interests Sadie but then is romanced by Lana. Ed initially is a little bit of a cold fish, but he soon comes out of his shell, and unfortunately he descends into a little bit of a cliche. There's a particular part of the book where we discover that he's been taking secret driving lessons and owns an Aston Martin, and while I understand that this idea of the handsome and wealthy man is the complete package and is a romantic ideal, it was to me the only part of the book that didn't feel completely natural. However, the relationship between Ed and Lana does work in the context of the book. Their relationship is kind of one where neither of them particularly wants to be in a relationship with the other, so things are a little bit awkward and there's some comedic effect there. The tone of the book reminded me of Tom Sharpe's Wilt, certainly up until the point where Kinsella jettisons the police investigation subplot. I actually found I genuinely laughed out loud at a few points, which is extremely rare for me when reading a novel. The first line of chapter 3, for example, is, "It turns out they take murder surprisingly seriously at the police station," which is so silly and so unexpected that I found that I was laughing out loud, and even this early in the book, I knew that I would be reading to the end regardless of what happened next. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ending of the book now, and if you're interested in this book and haven't read it and would rather not have that spoiled for you, I'm going to put a little counter on the screen here so that you can skip ahead. I won't give away anything particularly specific, but what I will say, when you're reading the book, if you put 2 and 2 together, it will give away the ending for you. So if you'd rather that didn't happen, skip ahead now. Because I cared so much about the two characters, I found myself hoping for a happy ending. Now, there is a happy ending of sorts. Of course, there wouldn't be anything else in a novel like this, but it wasn't the Hollywood cop-out ending that I genuinely found myself hoping for. I really wanted Sadie and Lana to stay together and the story to continue, and it's to Kinsella's great credit that she didn't do that, and I find that I like the book a little more for it. But the book isn't just silliness and laugh-out-loud moments. There's actually a real sense of melancholy at times, particularly when Sadie discusses the events of her life and the knowledge that she's had this stroke, and such a vibrant, active, free spirit has been really diminished in her later years. certainly outwardly at least. That's one of the themes of the book, really, is that it is only outwardly, and the inside she remained the same young girl. The contrast between the lighter and the more serious tones make this a really exceptional book. If you're a fan of Kinsella's other work and haven't read this, and I assume her style is broadly similar, I would highly recommend it. I genuinely believe that everyone that reads this book will enjoy some part of it.